The recording has started.
We got Top Cut to play. Where y'all going?
Let's do this.
Many Bothans lost their lives, it's true, to bring the news across the galactic view. From the outer rim to the core sphere's light, tune in this week and hold on tight.
This week on Across the Network, we bring you our very own Frank Myers. We discuss upcoming tournaments, a hot take from Lego Pizza that may leave you steaming, and then we dive into full details of our own Bothan Invitational and what you can expect as a viewer over the weekend. Enjoy the show. All right, welcome back to Across the Network. I'm Jonathan Fisher. I'm here with Lego Pizza. Lego Pizza.
What up, everyone? And today we have an awesome guest. It's Frank Myers.
Hey guys, man, I'm excited to be here. I've really been loving what y'all been doing these first few weeks with the Across the Network podcast. It's an exciting way for competitive players to have more content to engage with, and I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been fun having everyone on. The episode with George has been particularly popular. I think everyone go back and listen to that. They're all great in my opinion. But that one I've gotten some really awesome feedback on. So what are you guys excited about?
Testing. I mean, we got Seattle, the Bothan Invitational Atlanta is coming up now in 5 days from when we're recording this podcast. So probably 3 or 4 days when y'all put this out. And then, man, we are deep in the tank on new decks for set 4. It's crazy every time a set drops how much work we have to put in. I think, I know the old model of TCGs was that you would have a testing team with 4, 5, 6 people, right? And you would you 4, 5, or 6 guys or girls, whatever, would focus hard on, testing together. But I think Star Wars Unlimited is different in that with so many leaders and base combinations, it's more than just the archetypes of maybe in the old school way you'd have somebody who is more of an aggro player, somebody who's more of a mid-range player, somebody who's more of a control player in the various aspect and color combinations of that TCG. But in this TCG, wow. I mean, how could you with 4 or 5 guys possibly test everything that we test with 20 to 25 people testing? I don't know. I just feel like Star Wars Unlimited deserves a new kind of archetype for what a testing team and competition team is. And so I'm really, really grateful for you guys and the other members of our team that we're able to test so much more content for a new set, I assume, than other smaller teams are able to do. So that's what we've been doing.
I don't know if it's just because I'm unemployed right now, but I think I've played more SWU than I have ever played in the last 2 weeks in preparation for this tournament. And I'm just hyped. And I think you kind of hit it on the head, Frank, because, we got 18 new leaders this set. This is the 4th set.
Crazy.
So we've gotten 72 leaders now total. One of them is suspended, so I guess there's 71 leaders that you could potentially test. Obviously, 10 or maybe a little bit more than that are just very unplayable. You probably don't need to do anything. But, I don't know. A lot of people thought Lando was going to be completely unplayable, and there was a tournament this past weekend, and there was 3 Landos that were doing pretty good, and one of them was in the finals of a tournament. Who knows what can happen? Every set it's going to be a little different, and I think the sheer amount of leaders from this set particularly that had inklings of any amount of competitive play were super high.
Could be. We'll see in a week.
Yeah. Feels like a set 1 again. It makes me wonder if FFG is planning this type of cycle where Magic used to have main set and then 2 smaller sets, lower impact sets, and they built it out in those cycles, and then they had another high impact set. It definitely feels that way with this set, and it's going to be interesting to see if that's a pattern they plan on continuing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially with the rotation schedule, that makes sense, right? Because this is going to be the set that is in Premiere the longest compared to the next 2 sets for this coming year. So yeah, that makes sense. You want the sets that are in longest to have the most amount of impact and playability, so people don't feel you're wasting cards
Right.
in a set where it's going to be legal for so long.
Yeah, it's almost like it provides a new foundation to build on. So that's why it feels like so many of these leaders are playable, some of these cards are playable, because we're being presented with this new foundation that we're going to be building over the next few years.
And that's why I thought the podcast episode you did with George Hudson was so good about what to do if the new set comes out and how to build new decks. I think that's one of the few podcasts I've ever listened to twice, just because I really wanted to absorb everything George the Hulk had said in there and you guys had talked about. So
I've listened to it twice.
Yeah, if you haven't caught that episode yet, go back and listen to it. It's super good on this point. So
yeah, we have access to George all the time, and that's still nuggets of information that like is worth going back because
sometimes it's just good to like kind of hear something twice and think about it differently the second time through. That's my opinion, but
I agree.
Yeah, I know. Like our group is super focused on Beatle. We're super excited. We're gonna dive in this episode a lot on. And we're focused on the listeners. What can you expect from Beatle as a listener, as a viewer? What are you going to have access to? But we're going to try to hype you up too and get you as excited as we are, because this is going to be an amazing tournament. The results are going to be super meaningful. So we are heads down on Beatle, but Denver and Liverpool coming up the weekend afterwards. How are you handling that you've got these other tournaments coming up right after that you're going to be going to? What's your approach there?
Yeah, we also have Milan the weekend of Beatle, which will be interesting to see if we have like two different results from the EU and the United States, where it's like could we have like the completely different meta shakeup that kind of does happen often with European meta being usually control heavy. So it'll be interesting to see that. But yeah, Frank, what's your? Are you? I know you're going to Denver, right?
I am, yeah. So my thought on this is that all the hard work we're doing for Beatle is going to pay off in Denver. But what's going to be interesting for Denver is, I'll say two things. One, is there going to be a deck emerge from the first weekend of Milan and Beatle that that isn't on our radar right now? Like kind of how this Lando deck, I've seen some work on it. I think in Cato D. Matty had done some really good work on Lando. And there's some places I've seen a little bit of Lando, but is that going to be a deck that just kind of breaks out next weekend? And that said, I mean, could I even switch off what I'm playing because some new hot deck came along that we hadn't come up with? The other thing I think is it's so hard to build a sideboard right now, right? Like we know there's the Django Menace. I mean, you have to have but Django is so prevalent that it almost feels to me like you have to main deck for it. Like, it's not a sideboard problem. It's what's in your main deck to beat Django. And then what do you sideboard out and in when you're not playing Django is what it feels like to me right now. So to me, that's going to be like the two big things I'm looking for from this weekend coming up is what big deck emerges that we're not considering, and can we finally build a real sideboard knowing what the meta is going to be like, or more have a better idea what the meta is going to be like?
Yeah, no, that's super important. And I also, one of the things that I've noticed in my TCG journey is that I know there are players who, the great TCG players, but some of them are better at the chaos of like the week one where nothing is set in stone. They play their deck that no one expects, and they crush. And then there's the other players that are like, I'm just going to play the best deck. I'm going to tune it as best as possible, and I'm going to do well. And it'll be interesting to see like how that reacts between Beatle and Milan, where it's kind of fresh waters. People are trying whatever they think is the best and seeing what sticks. And then the following week where we have a snapshot of what we think this set is going to look like in terms of meta share and the menaces of the format, and seeing how players adapt to that and tune those decks that people had success with week one. It's always cool because usually it's different players that are good at those things, and not necessarily it's going to be the same player. But who knows? It could be.
Yeah, I think Django. There's just so many fundamental parts of playing this game, or putting units on the board and attacking your opponent's base with those units, right? Like those are your chess pieces in most cases, and Django just interacts with that so well that, in my opinion, it's causing people to think differently about the game. think differently about how to play the game and how to approach going to a tournament and expecting 40-50% of Django? How are you going to navigate that if you aren't if you're Django, if you're playing Django yourself or you're playing something else? And one of our teammates just won the TTI Invitational yesterday. Were you guys watching any of that?
I was. Yeah, our teammate Buku.
Yeah, terrific.
And it was his second TTI Invitational win. Back-to-back champ.
Yep.
Super awesome. And yeah, he took it down with Django. And it wasn't even like a crazy Django list. This was like an approved public Django list that we as a team were like, okay, Buku, you can take this out. Don't give away any of our secrets. For
we have
Seattle or
Spice.
Denver.
We have Django Spice. I can't wait to show off next weekend.
Yeah, and so like this, the meme of like this isn't even my final form is correct. I think in this scenario where it's like you can
100%.
play a list that is just a hodgepodge of like what people assume is like a standard stock Django list and do well with it. And that's the thing that scares me.
Yeah. I mean, and that is something we do as a team. Like Buku knew he was playing the Invitational and reached out and said, "Hey, team, what can I play here? Like, what do we want to not bring to this public tournament, given that these sectors, regionals, Seattle are coming up?" And this is what we came up with: a stock list. He won the whole thing.
Yeah, and I think that it's a sign of a strong deck when you can take maybe 40 to 45 of the cards as a core and then let you kind of spice the rest of the deck the way you want to. I know that when ECL Sabine was so popular, and still is, of course, but I know over in the K2OD threads that Justin and CJ, who did so much work on ECL Sabine, were very famous for like, here's our 45 cards that are like, you got to play these 45 in the deck. Now go figure out, do you want this or that or this or that for the last 5 kind of thing. So Django definitely feels that way, and but it may not after Beatle. If all the spice we've got coming, pays off, the list may be pretty set. Like, here's your best 60 for this deck. Well, at least 50. Sideboard, like I mentioned before, sideboarding is going to change a lot over the next 10 days.
Yeah. It's pretty tough. But another interesting thing out of that TTI, and Ian, you were watching, was the Lando list, which we've talked about a bit here. I got to join Rebel Trader. Shout out to Rebel Trader, TTI, go follow all his stuff. I saw he was commentating by himself, which he often does, but I was like, hey, I'm around for the next couple hours, and messaged him and joined him to do commentary for the Top Cut. So I was there. I got to watch it, and I was thinking hard about, okay, this Lando deck. They play an unassuming ground unit, search for a rebel, and now that ground unit is enabling shields in the space arena until you kill their little 1/3. It was an interesting deck. I think there's a lot of room to grow there.
Yeah, some of them were even playing Bunker Steve, which is draft all-star for this set, which I think he's called like Bunker Defender or something. He's a 1-drop 2/1 that has Sentinel if you control a vehicle, which is like a really cool, it's kind of just like a shield fodder guy that also just happens to have Sentinel in this Lando deck, because you basically spend 2 resources. You play this 2/1 on the ground when you have a spaceship out, and then you get to put a Sentinel on either of them, which is really cool. So you can either make your 2/1 like a 2/1 you can make a 2-cost Village Protector essentially, or you can put a shield on your space unit. It's super versatile, and I think that's like really awesome tech. And I think that the strategy with these Lando decks were that they were specifically built to beat Django. And they still didn't quite get there.
Hey, that's true. Look, the action compression of deploying a unit and applying a shield is excellent. A couple things I saw while I was commentating is, just to realize that indirect damage can bypass the shields. So you might have a shielded unit, but when I play my Devastator, I'm just going to kill it off, and then my whole lane is free to come at you. No matter, you could have had 3 shields on that unit. It's now dead.
Yeah. Yep. And that's why like the sneak attack or TDR plays with the Devastator are so brutal. Like, it's so crazy.
So I recommend people, when those TTIs come out, or if you go I think he chops it up later, but you've got the whole thing out there maybe. Go watch that top cut if you're interested in this Lando deck. Go see some of our Bothan players win the whole thing. It's pretty good. Check it out. So Ian, I think you brought another hot take for us. By the way, I need that steaming pizza. You got till Wednesday. give me a steaming pizza to put on the screen. What's your hot take?
Okay, so we've been talking about Django a lot. I am very confident that it's the best deck right now. I'm also very confident that the second best deck is Han still, mostly because I think Han, besides having a bad matchup into Django, is pretty good into like everything else, and especially the stuff that Django's bad into, like super hard control decks. So I think those two are the best decks. And that just makes me like wonder, where is Green Sabine in this meta? Like, where does that fall? Because I think both of those two decks are great into Green Sabine. So like if the two top decks are both good into Green Sabine, where does that put Green Sabine? Like, is this the worst position that Green Sabine has ever had going into like the beginning of a meta? Because usually when we have a new meta, aggro decks are like one of the best things to play, right? Because it's just super consistent and you know what you're going to get. But I just don't know if that's the case anymore.
I mean,
okay, that's
Frank
a hot
here.
take.
we got Frank here.
I've played Sabine in every set of some variety. I mean, I've played other decks too. I mean, I top cutted Gen Con with Han2 Blue. Wow. Okay, so you're saying let me get my head around what you're trying to say, Ian. You're trying to say that Green Sabine is not a factor compared to Django and Han in set 4.
I think that, going into this new set, we're in a whole new world, and I think that it might be the worst position that Green Sabine has had, especially going into the beginning of a set. Because I think usually Sabine is such an awesome like week 1 deck because people are trying out funky stuff, and aggro decks tend to roll over people trying out funky stuff. But I don't know if that's really the case here, because I think Django and Han are going to be prevalent, and both of those I think are really good into Green Sabine.
So Han is because I get to play a unit that's going to trade into your turn 1, just eat it alive, and then I'm going to start playing Cunnings. Is that your, hey, this is why it loses?
That's generally what it is. It's just like Cunning is a really hard card for Green Sabine to combat, and they can race you really fast because you have a 25 HP base.
Yeah, and Han's playing the 30, and then Django. You've got the same idea there, that Django's just exhausting your units. They're avoiding a lot of damage, and we're gonna race better.
Yeah, I think Django races it better because you get the tap while also applying pressure, and then just sneak attack, win the game. Like sneak attack is such a brutal card for them to deal with, because they don't have any real removal or interaction for sneak attack, right? Like they're not a yellow deck, so they can't play Waylay or some tap effect like Leia. So it seems really hard for them to beat giant hasty things.
So I have a hypothesis about how you've come to this incorrect conclusion, Ian. Because I don't agree at all that ECL Sabine is not competitive with Django and Han. I mean, in set 3, I was already able, as you know, to win some matches on ECL Sabine into Han. I think the lines of controlling the board were playable lines. They weren't all wins, but there's some really fun to watch matches that I'm even on stream with. Like
your match against Alex is probably one of my favorite Green Sabine versus Han matches I've ever seen.
Yeah, we found some obscure lines in those to get me through to the win there. So I don't know that in set 4 Han has picked up much that would say to me that there's a big difference between the matchup I had in set 3 with ECL Sabine and Han. As a matter of fact, if anything, the list I've been seeing on Han have been shifting to try to beat Django, and as they do, I think I actually have more play with ECL Sabine and Han if they're on an anti-Django list.
Yeah, just like playing those commandeers main have like no impact into the Sabine
almost
matchup.
No impact in my matchup. If you want to spend 5 resources to do that to me, to one of my little A-wings or something, please enjoy. So then the other point, though, is that you do bring up a good point about Django, and that correctly so, in our internal testing, we've been seeing Django generally doing better than ECL Sabine in that matchup. However, here's my hypothesis for you, and it actually harkens a little bit back to why it's almost like, why I like larger team testing. What happened inside our team here? About 25 of us are testing together all the time. What happened in set 4? New toys. So our ECL Sabine players, besides myself, all moved to other decks. Like, we have Buku, we have Michael Carlock, we've got Balloon Hands, Jeff Schutz out in California, even Jeff Creasy, who's a great Sabine player himself, but not really his main deck. And me, of those players, I'm the only one in our testing group still testing Green Sabine into y'all, right? So
that is true.
It might just be you're only seeing that's causing an artifact in our data, so to speak, if that makes sense. Where if Buku had stayed on Green Sabine, Michael, if these other guys, Jeff, Schutz, if they had stayed testing Green Sabine into you, I think you would have seen perhaps there is more play into Django, because my results have been fine in our testing. I'm not favored, but it's at worst 55-45. And then it gets back to the same paper, rock, scissors we saw already talked about with Han, is the more Django adjusts to try to beat the control decks and the Han decks that are beating it. I don't know. I think you're over. I think the what is the expression that
hot takes too spicy?
The rumors of ECL Sabine's death have been greatly exaggerated.
Yeah, there you go. I think
all right, I haven't called it a dead deck. Okay, I just think that maybe it's gonna have to be one of those decks that's gonna come out a couple weeks later to remind everybody that it still exists.
I would love to see Sabine win Seattle now.
Green Sabine.
Somebody get handed.
I'll take all the heat. I deserve it.
I would love to see someone get handed a $2,000 check for first place at Seattle because they're on Sabine.
Yeah.
So
just cruise through all the nonsense. Just smash it and show them you should have respected this deck.
It's a meme. It's actually a meme inside the K2OD server where I do a lot of my ECL Sabine research, and those guys are so on top of this, cutting edge of this deck. But it's a meme. What is it like? It's not a serious deck in the meta or something. There's some big, every set, Sabine's supposed to be dead. Every set has said Sabine is dead, and every set we keep winning PQs with it. So I don't know.
Well, yeah. Shout out to the K2D Green Sabine chat. That was a partial reason why I had the hot take in the first place.
yeah. They don't. You came in there. You came in there and chose violence. I mean, you came in there. If you're not
Maddie
already
put us. Maddie put us in line. It's fine.
Oh, it's not the first time. I not constantly, but there have been many occasions where I've had to wrestle up some of our stallions wild stallions that got out of the pen, and it caused problems in there.
Dad's got to step in every now and then.
Yeah, Uncle Frank has to come and stop kids fighting.
Yeah.
We're all love one game.
I think.
No, for sure. It's all out of love.
For me on Sabine Green, one of our problems with Django is how hard it is to clear the leader and maintain tempo, maintain pressure on base, etc. And I mean, maybe I'm not a Green Sabine player, but you do have great tools. You've got Poe, you've got Wrecker to come in and clear the Django leader and still leave a threat on the table and do it all in one action to maybe come into that turn with initiative, clear that Django leader to shut down the board exhaust ability and continue putting pressure on base. Django's on 25 health. If we can transition into that stage where we clear the leader with initiative, we attack with what we can, and then we play the rest of our reach to close out the game, I see Sabine beating Django enough in that analytical idea of how those games might play out.
I'm not going to give you my spice into the matchup, my lines, but I got some pretty good lines. All right.
Yeah.
Some
I
some
know,
might
I've
say it's
seen
the
them
best
firsthand.
lines. I don't know, but they're pretty good.
Okay.
Pretty good lines.
Okay.
We are connoisseurs of fine lines. Yeah, we definitely have to revisit this topic next week after Beatle when we can talk about the
Yeah.
actual spot. Because in your defense, Ian, not to take your side, but yes, you do some of the stuff that is in our version that you guys and have worked so hard on the team to create does in fact play better into.
Right.
I think it's also one of the ways that I build decks and play decks is that if I can't build and play a deck that has any amount of game into Sabine, I am throwing it out. Because it will always be that omnipresent thing, right? Like
Yeah.
it will always be the premier aggro deck until it rotates out, in my opinion. And I mean, maybe some of the pilot decks like Kaz or something could maybe take some meta share from it, but it will always be one of the decks that is going to be something that you need to be prepared for. My thing wasn't really saying that like it's unplayable, it's dead. It's just like compared to seasons past, like has its dominance somewhat been shortened in the short term until the meta shakes out with how many people I expect to play Django and expect to play Han. But who knows? We'll see.
We're gonna
Seattle's
find out.
coming up.
Yep.
5 days or something like that. I'm excited.
I'm just really glad that Jonathan, you didn't ever use that as your reason to play a deck or not play a deck.
Yeah.
How does it play into? We never would have met. We may not even been a Bothan network if you had tried your Emperor Palpatine and said, "I don't beat Sabine enough, so I'm not
Yeah.
playing this deck."
Yeah, I mean, last episode we talked with Michael about origin of Bothan Network, like where things came from.
Great
Now we have
episode, yeah.
another. We have another, or maybe one of the. I would say, like you and George, I would think are the two main founders of Bothan Network, and you're here with us today.
Right.
So, like, what would you? How would you add some color to that story of where things came from and why you did this?
Yeah, I thought the podcast with Michael last week was terrific. It was so fun to hear it from his perspective because he comes from, if anything, y'all didn't do enough to explain to the listeners who Michael is. I mean, he, besides just organizing and growing that massive Florida Discord, I mean, we first met Michael at the top 4 at the Orlando 5K. He was on Loopy's masterclass video on ACL Sabine. I mean, he's had consistent, amazing results, and so we're very fortunate that he was one of our original founding members. But so when I started playing Star Wars, I only had my brother Chris, who's on our team, as my only real testing partner. This is even before Courtney, my wife, started playing. But we had one local guy, Carl, who's really good, and he was playing with me. But he ended up he's always been more of a Lorcana player, so he actually ended up staying with Lorcana, not coming into SWU like we do, playing it super heavy. Then I decided I went to Atlanta for the SCG 1K where we met Jonathan. It's been about a year now. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's crazy.
and
Like, it really has been a year. Like,
yeah. And I knew that I loved the game so much. These mechanics, it's like we've already made all the chess analogies. We don't need to go through why SWU to me is the best TCG. I talk about some of it. I just did an interview with Two to Base with their blog. If you guys want to go read that interview, I talk about a little bit about Beatle and some of the history of how we came about throwing this big tournament and some of my views of Star Wars as a card game with the designers. But I won't get into that. It's not really the topic today. But what I knew is that I needed to find players better than me to get better at this game. And that is why at the tournament, when Jonathan, you sat down with Palpatine, I sat down with Sabine. It was late in the tournament. I was undefeated. I was arrogant about, oh, good, a Palpatine. I have no trouble beating Palpatine with Sabine. This is so easy. I was so relieved because I was tired. I didn't have the mental, stamina that I've built up now. That was my first Star Wars or TCG tournament in like 10 years. I'd played some arena online, but that's nothing like going to a physical event in person at an old age like I have. I'm an old age guy. And so I was actually really tired when we sat down to play. And that was more what the relief was. Like, oh, good. I can just beat Palpatine and move on to the last round. And then you 2-0'd me and just showed me some lines I hadn't seen before. I can still remember you flipping Palp to steal a rogue operative that was like, oh my God. It's crazy how it's like, if you're, maybe you guys are like that too, but like I can often remember exact situations where I lost games for a long time. Like I can go back through, and I think a lot of like chess players and high level skill players are like that. But so what I did is made sure I got your contact information, right? And you were busy for a few weeks after that. You really didn't have time to play. But I wanted to stay in touch with you because I was looking for people like yourself that impressed me with their SWU abilities. And because that's kind of like the formation of the Bothan network. Back then it was called the Inner Circle because it was just like my view was, hey, I want to grab some guys that are really good at this game. I still had the old school mentality of like you get 4 or 5 guys into a team. I mean, like Co Dameron, Colby was there, Michael, of course, Phil, who made top 4 with Luke Green at the Orlando 5K the next weekend. And, of course, George and I, funny story about how, so many funny stories. Like, we could do a whole podcast just on this stuff. I'll wrap up with one more, like, weird quirk of fate. When Swiss ended at that Atlanta 1K, I had not been to a real tournament in a long time. So when they asked if they gave us these anonymous ballots, SCG, to vote on whether you wanted to split or not. I thought we were splitting the prize pool. It never dawned on me we were not going to play the top cut. So I voted yes, and then started shuffling my deck, getting ready to play the top cut. And everybody's like, "Oh, we're going home. That was it. Everybody voted to split." I was like, "What are y'all talking about? Wait. We got top cut to play. Where are y'all going?" I never would have. We would have had to have played the top cut if I realized we weren't playing the top cut if I voted yes. Isn't that hilarious?
That's so funny.
That's how naive I was about. I know it's a new story. I've never told this story. So instead, George the Hulk also was there, and he didn't want to leave necessarily right away either. And he had this intriguing Vader blue deck that I was like, "What is that? What pile of cards is that guy playing?" And George is so much of a big personality in a wonderful way. Like, I was like, I want to meet this guy. Like, we hadn't played that day. So we sat and actually played like 5 or 6 games. And I took a couple off of him. He took a couple off me. And it wasn't like one-sided. But again, back to like, I recognized right away this guy was super good at the game and super deep in his thoughts. We had like this big Lieutenant Childson discussion. We had this discussion about Sentinels in general. He was lamenting like he needs to figure out ways to get his deck better. And so then he's like, "Well, do you want to play some more on TTS?" And I was like, "What's TTS?" I'd never heard of it. Like, he's like, "Well, you have Steam?" I was like, "Of course I have Steam. I hadn't been on Steam, and I guess since Civ 6 came out." But I was like, "Yeah, I have Steam." He's like, "Well, there's a tabletop simulator where we could play online that way." And I was like, "I'll try it. I'm not so sure. I don't know." But we exchanged Discord information, and so we spent the whole week we must have played like maybe 8 to 10 hours that week, just George and I, with me trying to figure out how the Blonde Sabine deck could beat his Vader Blue and how his Vader Blue deck could survive against aggro decks. It was like his deck got a lot better. I figured out I needed Change of Heart, which is a whole other story. We're not going to get into the Change of Heart story today. But long story short, this is the reason I want to tell these stories to the listeners is that this is, to me, how you build what we've built at the Bothan Network. You find great players that you vibe with that are, in my perspective, competitive but chill is the way I describe it. You find players that you hope are better than you. You throw all your effort into like building relationships with them, testing with them, putting the work in. And don't do it selfishly. Like George needed Sabine reps for his deck he was crafting with Guy. I gave him all the Sabine reps he wanted. It would help me too, but like you need to be like you'll get as much back as you give to a team. And so kind of that's like, I don't know, the advice I have. Look for players that are better than you, build relationships with people you vibe with, and then grab as many of those kind of people together, because I think life has changed from when TCG teams used to be 4, 5, 6 players, because first off, we're all busier. We all have full-time jobs except Ian. We all have like work to do. And then a lot of us have kids, a lot of us have family obligations. We have other games that are distracting us from our one game we're trying to play. There's other things we want to play. and people have life happen, so they go. If you have 5 or 6 people, and 2 or 3 people go inactive for a set, like, oh, I didn't like set 3, so I'm not going to play much right now. Well, how's your team really surviving that? But
it just usually falls apart.
We're up. I think we just added a couple of Europeans, so we're up to like 28 players that are technically on our team. But honestly, 5 of them are inactive that don't even come around or play. I mean, 3 to 5 aren't even competitive players. So it's like, if you're gonna have these ebbs and flows of competitive teams, of natural life events distracting them from putting in the 20 to 40 hours a week we like to put into this, then as a second job pretty much, then you need more people to allow that ebb and flow of life happening, if that makes sense. So that's also part of what's different now than 20 years ago when pro TCG teams first started forming.
I think also like online platforms to communicate and organize are so much better now. Right?
Yeah,
like
for sure.
Having a Discord channel that has deck threads and voice chats and like multiple voice chat channels, right? It's not just like one, right? Like it is so easy to stay connected to the people that you're playing with and instantly be like, hey, I'm looking to play, and then someone hops on in 5 minutes, right? Like it's so easy to organize and stay connected and do what you need to do so that it's much less of a struggle to organize 25 people or whatever, right? Like it's way easier than it used to be.
Right.
So. I mean, I was on
That's a good point.
One of those mystery online platforms we use to play this game, and I just use my name followed by BN on there. So oftentimes, like, people will know who I am when we're playing. And I was practicing aggro. This was yesterday or 2 days ago, and I ran into a player named Malvolio. He was playing Palpatine, and I was practicing aggro. And I asked him, I said, hey, we can play some more games if you want to. And they said, oh, absolutely. And I just asked them, are you in our Discord? And they said, the Bothan Discord? Yes, I am. And so I said, okay, send me a message, give me a link to a game, and let's play. So we jumped into voice chat. We kept playing games. I gave him some of my lists from set 3, and then some of my lists from set 4. And we kept playing into each other, and he was trying these other Palpatine lists. At the end, I gave him my set 3 list, my end of set 3 list, and I said, hey, this is my best list that beats the aggro deck you're practicing against right now. And he played it, and he won. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, and people jumped in. We were in public voice. People jumped in to watch us and hang out. And then he posted to our European channel to, engage with that community because he's preparing for one of the European sectors. And to me, that's what I love so much, is running into people that want to play more games, that want to dig in. And he was being thoughtful. We were talking about lines. We were digging into, should I take this line or that line? And it was just a great interaction. And it was the same kind of stuff you're talking about, Frank, in my opinion. Like, you can run into these people anywhere and meet them and jump in a voice chat and start hanging out and start practicing. There's all kinds of communities. You could go jump in KTOD, late night gaming, Bothan network voice chats, and play people and talk about your lines and start forming some groups of people you enjoy playing with. You can do it anywhere, is what I'm saying.
You can. And one thing I've enjoyed about putting on this Bothan Invitational Atlanta tournament is that we're doing this new, for Star Wars at least, this new 3v3 format of teams. And I've actually enjoyed seeing real teams form around this 3v3 concept. Like guys that were just loosely playing together, kind of like, oh, we're friends, we play we play at locals together. They've actually now formed actual Star Wars Unlimited teams with logos and jerseys and their own Discords, and they're like, okay, we have, and that's what I want to see. I want to see just a plethora of teams all across the world playing Star Wars together, because that's our model. I really think that the kind of make these CCGs, you need to play with friends, I guess, to really make them the best thing they can be in your life. And the way to do that in Star Wars, it looks like to me, is to form these groups together organically and grow your organic group. And if we do that enough at kind of a grassroots level, our game is going to grow competitively to match some of the bigger, eventually match the bigger games that some of us are kind of experienced with or know about.
Yeah, I mean, we're called Bothan Network on purpose. We're not trying to push people out. We're not trying to win every tournament by suppressing others, right? We are trying to win every tournament.
Yes, we're going to win every. No, we're not.
But we want to help.
Try to win every.
Yeah,
we're gonna try.
We're happy to help other people grow, help them grow their groups, help them share what we find to be successful for us, because we believe we can still win.
Yeah. Well, it's weird though because we are in this like dark mode on our server right now, which I hate so much. Like when the PQs in set 3 were going and all the meta there was no secrets to keep. You know, we had like weekly events where we'd play the public and our Seattle, what do we call those? Brawl nights. Yeah. Yep. You know, we'd set up events with Europeans. We would be active in our own threads and our own discussion. We have a coaching thread that we're very active in. But right now, for the last 3 or 4 weeks and one more week till Seattle, we've been super dark, like not in our public part at all, and I hate it. I can't wait to go back to like playing more with the public and look at LFGs, because that was a big part of why we started the network, was really just because we wanted to find more competitive players who have that chill mindset to practice with and play with. You can practice with people who aren't on your team and get better. I mean, we do collaborations with private collaborations outside our official team all the time. So I'm looking forward to when we can go back to like having our public part of our Discord being super active again.
It won't last long. We're almost there.
Hey, Spirit. I see Ian grab Spirit.
What's up, puppy?
Yeah,
beautiful.
She came into my office. She was curious about the cool stuff we're talking about, like Seattle. She's hyped.
Yeah, should be hyped.
Yeah. We have a channel in the Discord dedicated to Seattle, where you can go in and see a flyer that Frank's put together. But we're going to go over, what you can expect as a listener. Why we're hyped. Let's start with why we're hyped. What's going on, guys? Like, why are we so excited about this tournament?
I mean, it's not just, the greatest tournament ever. It is the biggest Star Wars Unlimited event to date. Biggest prize pool, most amount of players, like first ever competitive 3v3 event. I mean, what more could a SWU player want?
Yeah, so we've had big events near the start of each set. With set 2, we had Gen Con. Even back in set 1, we had the Orlando 5K. In set 2, we had Gen Con. That's, Ian, where you and I bonded really for the first time. In set 3, we had SCG Columbus. Was that where you guys went and busted out at SCG Columbus? But this year, we just didn't have anything at the start of the set 4 schedule. We saw the end of the set 3 PQs. We were guessing maybe May or June for the set 4 PQs. We don't know because FFG has not been quick to give us schedules. Then the SCG events weren't even starting till the middle of April with Denver the second weekend of April. So we had this big gap from when set 3 dropped to when we thought SCG Denver would be. And we're like, what are we going to do for these 5 weeks? And we were like, let's have a tournament. Let's do it ourselves. Why not? Why wait around for others to do it if this is what we want to do? So I think one of the reasons to be hyped for Seattle, and since we're starting on Friday, March 28th, it is the day before the Milan sector. So we are going to be the first big tournament of set 4.
Yes, sir.
Is that going to affect deck list submissions for Milan?
100%.
Yeah.
If you're not watching our 3v3 coverage on Friday, March 28th, and then deciding what deck to play or how to tweak your deck for Milan, you're doing it wrong, people.
We're even EU friendly with our start time being at 8 a.m.
Yeah, 8 a.m. I mean, what would that be like? 2, 3 in the afternoon we're going to start
2 or
in
3,
Europe?
something like that in Milan.
So people on Friday,
exciting.
March 28th, they can get off work and see the top
they got
3v3
6 hours
rounds.
to prepare their deck list.
So I guess
That's 6 rounds. That's a lot.
The optimal play line is to fly to Europe to watch coverage then, right? Like, that's where you want to be. 8 a.m. is a little early for a lot of people.
If you're on vacation, the optimal
Take
thing
a
is to
vacation,
fly to Atlanta and play in the
Fly to
event.
Atlanta.
That's the optimal. Come on. We
You're not
we
wrong,
sold
you're
out
not
on the
wrong.
3v3 and the Saturday, but we have some Friday afternoon 6K tickets, not very many, but a couple left. And we do have some Sunday 2K. I think we only have like 100 of those tickets sold. So you could still grab a Sunday 2K ticket in Atlanta if you want to. But the turnout's the response has been fantastic. I think we're up to almost 200 different individual players coming to the event. We've sold, I think, well over $13,000 of tickets.
That's crazy.
Yeah, one thing we did was we kept ticket prices really low by TCG cash price tournament standards.
Yeah.
Like our 2K is only like a $25 ticket. I mean, what's a 2K at SEG? $50, right?
45 to 50. I think, yeah.
Right.
Our 6
Actually, no. The 2K at SEG, I think those are like almost $60. I don't know. Yeah, it's crazy. It's like less than half.
And our $6,000 prize pool tournament, our tickets are only like $35 for that, like for a $6,000 prize pool tournament. The $2,100 prize pool team event's only like $30 per person. So we definitely could have made a lot more money on ticket sales but we don't want to do that because I think our guiding light for putting on Beatle was let's do the competitive tournament weekend the way we would want to go to a competitive tournament weekend. What is it? It's like the golden rule of tournaments. Like, let's put on the tournament that we would want ourselves. And so ticket prices are reasonable. We have exclusive play mats you can win for doing well in the tournaments. We have a charity that we're supporting, the Our House charity, that you can actually, one of our 25 serialized exclusive play mats are going to have a silent auction throughout the weekend where people can actually bid on getting one of those exclusive play mats without having to win it. But the money from that will go to charity. We have a 3v3 team competition. Like, when's that ever? Why is that not? Why are we a year into the game and we're just now getting a team competition?
First one. It's crazy.
And we have a online bracket competition where you can actually pick who you think's going to win of the teams, the 3v3 team competition, because it's doing it like a bracket. And we'll be giving out a t-shirt and some other of the prizes to the people.
March Madness, baby.
That's right. Why not embrace March Madness? We're going to have cool merchandise based on our logo. We hired a Sioux artist to do our play mat, so that's going to be we did like a concert style t-shirt, like a festival concert where like the front is a cropped down version of the play mat. In the back, it lists all the teams that were there, all the content creators that I knew about. I missed a couple. Like Jake Shell's coming. He's got a good YouTube channel. I didn't put him on the back because I didn't realize that's who that was. But I'm not saying that I did everything perfectly. I've made little mistakes along the way.
Yeah, we're doing our best.
We're doing our best. But so the t-shirts for the event are super cool, and so is the other merchandise. Every player that comes gets a swag bag with a lot of cool stuff in it. Like we made a special initiative token with the Beatle logo on it. That's going to be in the swag bag. There's a life pad that's been customized with the Beatle logo, and on the inside, it's a perfect way to write your life totals for a Star Wars event. It actually is Star Wars, like base, leader, all that kind of stuff is in that. And we have other swag stuff too that's going to be in the bag from other content creators who are going to be there. Everybody will get a Set 4 weekly play pack. That's from Game On in Chattanooga. They've donated enough week 4 play packs to give everybody who comes one of those in the swag bag.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Swag
and then
it's gonna be crazy.
Oh, yeah.
The swag bag, like, we should not underrate that stuff because one of my favorite things that Magic used to do was at Grand Prix, you would sign up and it would be like, I don't know, $70 or something, right? And you're thinking, okay, it's a lot to play in this event, but regardless of the prize pool, you got like a bunch of stuff. Like, you got a play mat, you got a deck box, sometimes you got sleeves, and you would get like a life counter. Like, that's the type of stuff that, like, even if you walk away and you like O2 drop the event or whatever, like, you have the memorabilia for that event that you'll always be able to like cherish, and people will be like, oh, where did you get that? And then you'd be like, oh, I went to this cool event that the Bothan Network hosted in Atlanta. And like, it starts a story, right? Because like that, I remember like walking past the table and like seeing a cool Magic playmat and be like, oh, where'd you get that? And it's like, oh, this was like the playmat that was for, Grand Prix Nevada or whatever, Grand Prix Las Vegas, and it just like sparks up a conversation, and those are the type of things that like, it's like the silent cool stuff. You know what I mean? Like, people really do appreciate that stuff, and to have an event that has like a swag bag like this that just comes with your like ticket, like, and it's so cheap, like that's crazy.
Yeah.
Because now I don't even think these Grand Prix that Magic does. I mean, they're not even called Grand Prix anymore, but I don't even think you get anything. It's like you got to pay to even get in the building, and then you got to pay for the event. It's like you don't get anything unless you pay for like their VIP ticket or whatever. So
Yeah,
we will be getting. Oh, go ahead, Jonathan.
I think for listeners, like, why is this so exciting? Not just the coverage and how amazing this event is going to be, but there's non-zero chance we do this again, right? Like, if this goes off really well, and we can find a scheduled time to do something like this in the future, maybe we do it again. So
yeah,
it's incredible.
That's really the key
what
question.
We're doing.
Yeah, is the schedule. Like, we really do need FFG to get better about giving us schedules for their events further out. Because ironically enough, and I mentioned it in the 2 to Base interview, if you guys want to go find that on their blog, it's ironically, if they had just announced their sector and regional schedule earlier, we wouldn't have even put on this tournament, because we were looking at the calendar, there's nothing on the calendar. Like, what are we going to do in March for SWU? There's nothing there. What are we going to do in April? We have to go to the middle of April to Denver, like April 15th or whatever it was, for SEG, if we're even going to fly out to Denver. Who wants to go to Denver? It's so far away from us. But then they announced the sector and regionals, and so honestly, if we'd already known those dates were there, we probably wouldn't have done. We'd just all be focused on Denver right now. Like, oh, okay, we'll go to Denver and play there. So to have another Beatle down the road, we really do need a much longer calendar from FFG showing us when their events are, so that we can look and see, is there a gap. We're only going to do one of these if there's a gap in the schedule. We're not going to do it to compete with FFG, to compete with SCG. We're not competing with anybody by doing this. We didn't think we were, especially when we did this. We're really just looking for, where as fans can we support this game we love? Can we support FFG and support these tournaments by having a spot in the calendar that's empty? We'll put something there that we love to do, and that it'll be amazing. That's kind of our goal is.
Yeah.
If we have another one.
How many players with the day 2 bye are in this tournament, Frank?
Oh, so I haven't even. Okay, this is just my rough count of people I've verified. Just in the 3v3 tournament on Friday, we have 23 players that have a day 2 bye to Galactics. 4 of them got it from finishing runner-up to someone who already won their PQ, and then 19 actual PQ winners are in our 96-person 3v3 tournament, because we capped it at 32 teams to do the bracket. So imagine that, 23 out of 96. I dare say, if you're going to go to sectors or regionals with 300 to 500 people, you're not going to have that concentration. You may have more day 2 buys at some of those events, but you're not going to have this kind of level of concentration. The viewers watching this, every 4th person you'll see Friday is a day 2 buy. Like, that's the concentration of day 2 buys is going to, you won't see that again until Galactic's day 2 itself.
Yep. Yeah.
It's crazy how good the field's going to be. Yeah. It's ridiculous how good the field is. And I may not know I may even find out there's more PQ winners and day 2 buys. Those are just the ones I know about personally. So
for our listeners, let's get into coverage. Like, what can they expect on? So March 28th is when we start, and we'll be starting at 8 a.m. Friday,
Eastern
March
time.
28th, EST, with 3v3 coverage.
Right. We're real excited about how we're trying to do. I say trying to. We have a plan. We'll see if we can execute the plan. But assuming we execute our plan, we're at this amazing card shop we partnered with called Cards HQ in Atlanta. Nick Frazier is their tournament organizer, and I have yet to come across a better tournament organizer than Nick. He is fantastic, and Cards HQ is super lucky to have Nick as their TCG organizer. He has got a amazing setup where they have a poker-sized table. You can see this on... Courtney did a video, if you want to go back on her Blonde Sabine and find this video, but... they have a poker-sized table as their featured table, and they have stadium seating next to the table. So like three rows elevated of people can sit and watch the featured table. So we measured off this featured table, and it actually will fit 3 play mats easily with plenty of room around it. So what we're doing is we're setting up a featured table for the 3v3, and we built Chris Schutz from our team is amazing Hollywood film and camera guy. He's helping us set up a over the featured table. We're gonna have 3 high quality cameras looking down at all 3 games. So what that means is that Josh from Next Gen Gaming, Josh Schneider from Next Gen Gaming, and Courtney, they're going to be casting it live in Friday. They're actually going to be able to. The plan is they're going to watch one game to finish. Probably pick of the 3v3 teams. Probably pick the game that should finish the quickest. Then they get to push a button and switch automatically to another game that's ongoing in the 3v3. So you're never going to have a drop in coverage until the match. And then if there's only one of the 3 games still going on, they'll switch to that game. So you're going to actually have this cool effect where right now as you watch streaming, there's a lot of downtime. You know this, Jonathan. You're one of the best casters in the game. Ian, you've done casting with us. There's actually often a lot of downtime, like somebody's sideboarding. So yeah, you're talking about what the sideboarding is, but if they take their time sideboarding, you really know you're like stretching out like what you can talk about but not at Beatle, because we're going to have that 3 camera setup for the top 3 tables also all throughout the weekend. So when you and Jeff Creasy, our other great caster, are casting the $6,000 event, you guys can actually switch at a push of a button from one game, one match to another match amongst those 3. So we're excited to see that because I think that's going to really improve the quality of our coverage of this event.
I think that's going to be amazing for viewers.
Yeah, exactly.
For Jeff and I, less breaks. Which, hey, that's okay. You know, I want to go to bed very tired that night. So I'm excited.
So yeah, I'm gonna have like no sleep this entire weekend. You kidding me?
Let's go.
Thursday we're gonna all be hanging out at the Bothan house and probably staying up way too late for a 7 a.m. start to our day the next day.
Door opens at 7. So that's actually one of the good things for you guys casting, Jonathan, as you know, is that we have plenty of our teammates are going to be there. So if ever you needed a break during the weekend from casting, plenty of us would be happy to jump in the caster's chair and give you a break. You'll have
some of those like between the round times. If you gave me like George the Hulk, we could just chat it up for 30 minutes, no problem.
But it's one nice thing about doing live casting is we're going to be able to seat with you people for you to interview between rounds.
Yeah, just grab someone we can talk about what they've been doing. Yep.
And you could actually rotate all. Like one of the casters could have a break while the other caster is interviewing that person, and vice versa. Y'all could rotate to get breaks that way. But for the audience, basically, what we're describing is an incredible 3 days of almost constant SWU coverage. I mean, from when we start 8 a.m. Eastern time, Friday morning, you go almost just watch all the SWU for set 4 you'd ever want to watch. You guys are going to see the spice. Like, the audience is going to be able to see what is, like, Ian's been alluding to it already in this podcast. Like, oh, we've got some spice for Django. Can't wait to show it off. Well, this is where it's going to get shown off. This is where you at home would be like, oh, I'm going to Denver next weekend. I better watch all of this and digest it. And, that card is incredible. It's going in my deck for Denver now. I'm glad I saw that on the stream. And then McClunky Gaming's coming, too. Another one of the fantastic groups and organizers that their team is not only super competitive, they also set the bar for excellent streaming coverage. So while they're simulcasting with us on their Twitch channel for the 3v3, because we're having to use their caster, Josh Schneider, since our casters, Jonathan and Jeff, are going to be playing in the 3v3, which is awesome. I'm glad you're getting a chance to play, Jonathan. But they're actually going to be showing that they'll get a table of coverage too throughout the weekend. So besides the 3 tables that will be broadcasting on Blonde Sabine's YouTube channel, there'll also be a whole nother table being broadcast on McClunky's Twitch stream for the 6K and the 2K and the top 16. So unbelievable amount of coverage you guys are going to get this weekend and the audience watching. I don't think you could be more excited about a Star Wars weekend. Yeah. And then, as like the nightcap, you guys are going to get to do the recap show, right? Across the Network Nightcap. I think we just came up with a name for it. The Across the Network Nightcap. Let's go. Tell us about what you guys are doing every night when the live coverage ends.
Yeah, well, when the live coverage ends, the after party begins.
Let's go.
And that will be with me and Jonathan and some mystery guests, which will be determined on the fly based on, I don't know, who's still awake. Yeah, I don't know if we're going to do it at the venue or maybe back at the Bothan house, maybe a mix of both. But it should be a lot of fun, just see how people are feeling after the first day, talk to people on the team who are maybe undefeated in the 6K from that first pool after the first 4 rounds.
Right.
Then the next day, talk about, like congratulating people who made the first top 8. Talk about the people who started the Saturday 2K or 6K pool 2, how they're doing at the end of the Saturday events, and like hype for the top 16 that happens on Sunday, and then also talking about like what changes are people going to make for the 2K, right? Like things like that. Like what did they learn from the first 2 days of this event? How are they going to use that information to really come ahead on that Sunday 2K event?
I'm actually
That's
excited
exciting.
about what you're going to be doing, Ian.
Well, yeah, my secret
It's not
interview
secret.
shorts that will be, it's not so secret interview shorts that will be happening between rounds. Yeah, so I'm going to be walking around the venue in between rounds, hoping to win all my games very early, just jamming Django into people's faces. And then I'll be interviewing people who are doing well, fan favorites that people have, other content creators, asking them how their day is going, getting just quick little shorts, like 60-second interviews. They're going to be spontaneous. People might not even know I'm going to be doing it. I'm just going to hand them a mic, and we're going to chat for a hot sec. It's going to be fun.
Oh man, yeah. I'm glad to be at the event, but if I was not able to make it, I would be real excited about the coverage that they're going to get at home. Because even when you're at home, you can still play the bracket challenge game. Like you can join our bracket challenge, guessing the bracket, even if you're watching the event from home. Definitely put that
easy to find too. You just you can go to our website bothannetwork.com. There'll be a way to join the bracket there. There's not much else on that site right now, so don't get too excited. But we do have our own domain. We do have a website that we're working on, and that's where you'll find the bracket, www.bothannetwork.com, spelled exactly like you'd expect, and I'll have a link in the description. So, yeah, I think it's pretty exciting. There'll be is it Milan? The Milan sector will be happening. You'll have McClunky coverage. You'll have Blonde Sabine coverage. You'll have shorts from Ian. I mean, I don't know what you're going to do this weekend if you're a listener. Like, do you need to tell your spouse to just expect you to be gone? I'm thinking, like, when I come back from this weekend, how long is it going to take me to consume all this stuff myself?
I know. It's crazy to think about how much work I'm going to have to do on Star Wars between Seattle and Denver the next weekend.
Yeah.
It's exhausting. But again, it's why we have a big team, though. Because we have a lot of really great players working together, collaborating. The more work will get done on our team between the two events, I would dare say, than any other team, because we have so many hands. What is it? Many hands make light work. Is that the expression? Yep. I don't know. Yep.
So that's just about going to wrap up the show today. Do you guys have anything else top of mind that we didn't talk about you want to mention?
I'm just so hyped. I mean, this is going to be the greatest weekend of SWU of my life. I hope that I win everything. I hope that it goes well and it's smooth. Yeah. But I have all faith in Cards HQ and everybody there. So I'm just super excited. It's just such a great way to start off the set, and we have a bunch of stuff coming right up afterward. I mean, Frank, what's the next couple of weeks look like for you? Is it just all SWU?
Well, I did go back to work again, so I have to work now. But again, it's why you have a big team. Y'all have been picking up the slack for me lately. But the Star Wars it's going to be exhausting this week to get Seattle pulled off the way we want to pull it off, and then try to get ready for Denver. I'm not even thinking about how well I'm playing. It's like I want to play well, but right now, having an amazing event is what my goal is for the weekend. And if that happens, I don't care who's getting the $2,000 check for winning the 6K at that point. I hope it's one of us, but I'm just going to be happy if the event goes off amazingly. So.
Yeah, I had the same final thought. That's what I'm thinking about. How can we run the best event possible? How can it go smoothly? We have a great plan. We have a lot of incredible people involved in throwing it off. And, where can things go wrong? That's where my mind's thinking about, and trying to iron those things out and make sure we throw an incredible event for the attendees and everyone else across the Star Wars Unlimited community that's excited to tune in and see what's going on here.
Yeah.
So, what's next with Across the Network? After Beatle, we'll be doing a show where we try to bring someone on, maybe the winner of the 6K. If Ian wins the 6K,
or an entire 3v3 team, who knows?
Yeah, we'll see who wants to join us, but we'll do some sort of post Beatle show for our next show. We'll bring on a winner, and we'll also be talking about the Milan results. We'll have those to go over as well. So it's gonna
compare the two events, see how similar they are.
You're gonna see some different formatting to this show because we're gonna have events to cover. So that'll be exciting to go through some deck lists, go through some play lines, dig in a bit more with some of the best players in the game on how these decks work. So don't miss that. And then after that, Denver and Liverpool's coming up, and we'll be doing the same kind of thing where we try to bring people in that did really well and talk about what's going on with the meta. At that point, we will have had Beatle Milan and additional sectors. So we'll get to talk about how the meta is shifting as well. Did we solve Django? Is Django running over the meta? We don't know yet, but on those shows, we'll get to talk about it, and we'll see where we are.
Yeah, we might need a Ian Eats Crow segment. I know Frank will love that one.
Yes. I plan to show off my version of Sabine at Beatle, so I hope it is worth talking about next week. If it's not, okay. But
yeah.
We'll see.
But yeah, thanks for joining us, Frank.
Man. Frank, if that happens and we have you back on the show twice in a weekend,
let's
and
go.
You're basically just going to be there, be like, what did you think was going to happen, Ian?
I look forward to it. All right. Thanks, guys.
Love it.
Bye, everyone.
Yep. Bye, guys. Thanks.
Everybody stop your Audacity recordings.
Oh, is that supposed to start one?